A silent smile is not a gesture of kindness. It is a weapon, a tool used by those who understand the art of control, the weight of perception, and the subtle domination of power without noise. When a man is hated, the expected response is retaliation, anger, explanation, or defense. These are emotional reactions, and emotions are predictable. A man who reacts has already surrendered the advantage. He has allowed his enemies to dictate his behavior, and in doing so, he lowers himself to their level. But the man who smiles, calmly, quietly, remains above it all. He refuses the invitation to descend into the mud. He speaks nothing, and yet says everything. That smile unsettles because it is unreadable. It denies the hater the satisfaction of impact. The enemy expects to provoke. That is the nature of envy and pride. The one who resents you wants proof that they matter to you, that their efforts to pull you down are working. They want to see you shaken, offended, or thrown off balance. Their pride hinges on your reaction. When they insult you and see your face tighten, they grow stronger. When they witness your anger, they feel important. They believe they've reached you. But when you respond with a measured, unbothered smile, it reverses the current. Suddenly, they are the ones exposed. Their efforts are made to look weak, desperate even. And you, by doing nothing but smiling, become untouchable. That smile carries the weight of confidence, of self-mastery, of someone who knows he stands higher and does not need to prove it. A man who can smile when he is hated, who remains composed while others attempt to provoke him, demonstrates a rare kind of power. It is the power of restraint, of internal control. It is more feared than loud threats or visible aggression, because aggression reveals insecurity. But restraint reveals dominance. It is a quiet signal. You are not worthy of my reaction. That is more punishing than any argument. A hater cannot defend against it, because it leaves him with no foothold, no emotional grip, nothing to twist or escalate. The moment he realizes his words or actions are meaningless to you, his pride begins to erode. Not through confrontation, but through your indifference. That's why a smile, in the right moment, does more damage than a sword. It slices not through flesh, but through ego. And ego is far more fragile. Most men carry their pride like armor, thinking it makes them powerful. But when they see it ignored, when their efforts to insult or provoke are met with silence and composure, they begin to question themselves. Was the blow too soft, or is the target simply above it? Either answer stings, because nothing threatens pride like irrelevance. And nothing makes a man feel irrelevant faster than the smile of someone who will not be moved. Never argue, just rise. To argue is to stoop, to meet your opposition on equal ground and validate their position by acknowledging it. The moment you engage in a dispute, you signal that the other side is worth your time, your energy, your voice. That is already a concession. Words become traps. Once spoken, they can be twisted, misinterpreted, thrown back at you. A man who argues exposes himself. He shows his emotions, his logic, his pressure points. This is a vulnerability the wise man avoids. He does not defend his name with words. He defends it with results. Silence, followed by success, is the sharpest form of retaliation. Those who oppose you often seek only that, a response. They want you to waste your time proving them wrong. They want to pull you down into endless debates where victory isn't determined by truth but by noise. In doing so, they rob you of direction. Arguing forces you to look backwards, to explain, to justify, to unpack things that do not need to be carried forward. Rising, on the other hand, requires no explanation. You ascend by actions. You remove doubt by achievement. You bury criticism under the weight of progress. A man who is too busy building does not stop to throw stones at those shouting from below. To argue is to be emotional, and emotion is a liability when you're dealing with opposition. Anger, frustration, defensiveness. These are reactions that haters count on. They provoke to ignite. Once you're ignited, you're predictable. But when you refuse to engage, when you stay quiet and continue moving forward, you become something else entirely. Untouchable. Your silence is not a sign of weakness, but of superiority. It shows you are unaffected. It denies them the satisfaction of knowing they've rattled your frame. This kind of control, restraint in the face of provocation, is rare and it is feared. People respect results more than rebuttals. They watch what you do more than they listen to what you say. When you choose not to argue, you force others to measure you by your outcomes. Your enemies will try to discredit you with words, but if your actions remain undeniable, their noise becomes background static. They grow louder, more desperate, trying to drag you into the arena of debate. But you must remain above it. You must let your rise become the rebuttal. Their pride cannot stand against your progress. Because pride feeds on relevance, on being part of the story. When you don't acknowledge them, when you don't validate their voice with a response, they begin to vanish. Their words echo into a silence that you refuse to fill. And in that silence, they shrink. Success is the language of power. It cannot be denied, dismissed, or distorted. No argument can erase the evidence of elevation. Let others speak while you act. Let them debate while you ascend. Let them challenge shadows while you move quietly into the light they cannot reach. Haters survive on one thing: your reaction. They don't need to defeat you. They just need to disturb you. The slightest shift in your demeanor, the smallest hint of frustration, gives them the fuel they crave. Their existence is rooted in opposition. Without your attention, without your emotional investment, they are nothing. That is why they press, why they provoke, why they linger in the background with snide comments and petty challenges. They are not seeking truth or justice. They are seeking relevance. They want to know they can still touch you, even if only to irritate. The moment you react, you've granted them power. You've stepped into their game. Every outburst, every angry reply, every defensive explanation is a meal to them. You feed them by acknowledging their presence. You raise them by trying to knock them down. It's a trap disguised as confrontation. What they truly fear is not being insulted in return. It's being ignored. Indifference is the great destroyer of attention seekers. It strips them of the one thing they cannot manufacture on their own importance. A man who shows no reaction leaves them in silence, and silence becomes unbearable to those who live to be noticed. They watch closely. Every step you take, they measure it against their expectations. They want to see failure, not because it gives them advantage, but because it gives them validation. It tells them they were right to resent you. But when you continue forward, unbothered, unmoved, unaffected, you deny them that validation. You become the reminder of what they are not. You reflect back to them their own insecurity, their own inability to maintain composure, and in that reflection, they begin to unravel. Their pride can endure insult, but it cannot endure irrelevance. The man who learns to starve his enemies of attention becomes more dangerous than any loud adversary. He does not chase, he does not argue, he does not look back. He walks forward with focus, allowing the noise behind him to fade naturally. This posture, this deliberate detachment, speaks volumes. It signals control. It shows that your energy is reserved for greater pursuits, that you are too occupied with progress to entertain distraction. This drives them mad, not because they wanted a war, but because they wanted a role in your story. Without your reaction, they remain outside of it. To master this discipline is to master your image. And your image, when not distorted by emotion or impulse, becomes a fortress. No one can weaponize your words if you do not give them any. No one can celebrate your fall if you do not stumble where they can see it. You become a blank wall to their attacks. They throw everything they have, and it returns to them with silence. That is when the cracks begin. Not in you, but in them. Because they can't hurt what they can't reach, and they can't win against someone who doesn't play. Control is power. Not the illusion of power that comes with shouting the loudest or acting the most aggressive, but the real, quiet power that settles in a man who governs himself before he governs anything else. The world is filled with men who chase control outwardly, over people's situations, opinions, but the few who command true dominance are those who begin inward, to smile while being hated, to stand calm in the storm of slander and provocation, is not a sign of weakness. It is the clearest evidence that a man has mastered himself. He does not react because he is not controlled. He does not waver because his emotions are not his rulers. And that frightens those who lack the same discipline. When others lash out, they expect reaction. They rely on it. They press until the button is pushed, until they can say, "I got to him." Most men, when targeted, show their nerves. They respond emotionally defensively, trying to prove something or reclaim pride they believe has been taken. But control is never taken. It is surrendered. The man who holds it chooses silence, chooses calm, chooses his smile not as a sign of surrender, but as a strategic blow. Because nothing causes more discomfort to a bitter man than seeing his target unaffected. The more calm you are under fire, the more control you display. That calm becomes pressure for those who cannot replicate it. In the presence of control, chaos feels small. A man who remains still while others stir draws all the attention. He appears untouchable. His poise unsettles those who depend on reaction to feel strong. That stillness is power. It turns the one being targeted into the one who dominates the room without lifting a hand. And it is this silent command that begins to unravel those who thought they were the aggressors. Control turns the attacker into the anxious. They begin to second-guess themselves. They start wondering why their efforts don't land. That doubt is the seed of their collapse. You cannot always control what is said about you, but you can always control how you respond. The ability to maintain emotional neutrality is not natural, it is built. It comes from experience, from choosing discipline over ego repeatedly until it becomes instinct. Every time you resist the urge to speak, to strike back, to explain yourself, you grow in strength. The restraint you develop becomes armor, and it is a kind of armor that reflects every attempt to penetrate it. When your enemies throw accusations, when they slander your name, and your only answer is the calm gaze of someone who cannot be rattled, they lose footing. They become aware of your distance, of your untouchability, and that distance becomes dominance. Because the higher you rise in self-control, the harder it is for anyone to reach you, let alone shake you. Victory is subtle. The loudest man rarely wins. The one who boasts, who shouts his triumphs, who announces every step forward, often does so to convince himself that he is rising. But true power does not need to declare itself. It moves quietly, deliberately, without the need for applause. The man who truly wins does so in silence. He allows others to talk while he advances. He allows others to plot while he prepares. And when the time comes, he has already taken everything before they realized what was happening. This is the essence of dominance. Not just to win, but to win without confrontation, without spectacle, without giving your enemies the satisfaction of resistance. The most effective victories are the ones that feel inevitable. They don't come from open battles or public arguments. They come from consistency, from discipline, from remaining 3 steps ahead while others are distracted by emotion. The pride of your enemies relies on visibility. They want to see the fight. They want their role acknowledged. But when you rise without ever engaging them, when you elevate quietly while they wait for a reaction that never comes, they are left with nothing. No recognition, no war, no relevance. You deny them not just your energy, you deny them their identity as your opposition. This is the kind of defeat that breaks something deeper than reputation. It breaks the illusion of control that others believe they have over your life. They thought their words mattered. They thought their actions could block your path. They thought they could influence your name, your pace, your state of mind. But you moved without them. You smiled and stepped forward. You built in silence. And as your results began to speak louder than any insult, they realized the battle was over before it ever began. Not because you crushed them with force, but because you never acknowledged their presence in the first place. To dominate without confrontation requires patience. It requires that you delay gratification, that you forego the temptation to respond. It requires the confidence to let your actions speak in a language far more powerful than words. And most of all, it requires clarity. A man who knows where he is going does not stop to explain the journey to those trying to block the road. He keeps walking, he keeps building, and he allows his consistency to do what arguments never could. Silence every critic, every doubter, every hater who once believed they could stand in his way. Subtle victory leaves no scars to study, no headlines to distort, no drama to replay. It simply moves past resistance like water flowing around stone. The stone remains proud, unmoved in appearance, unaware that it is being worn down. In time, the stone is reshaped completely, not by violence, but by constant, quiet persistence. That is the nature of true power, to reshape the world without ever needing to raise your voice. Let them speak. Let them plot. Let them twist their faces in envy and whisper your name with bitterness. You will not answer. You will not stoop. You will not break your silence to meet their noise. Because your power does not live in reaction. It lives in control, in the calm gaze that sees through their games, in the quiet confidence of knowing your rise is already in motion. They want your attention, but you owe them nothing. They want a battle, but you offer only indifference. And in that indifference, you become untouchable. While they burn with pride, you smile. While they wait for your anger, you rise. While they speak your name, you build your legacy. Not through confrontation, not through noise, but through discipline, detachment, and the unshakable force of silence. That is how you break them, without saying a word.